Hey there. Welcome to another Tesla Motors Club podcast. My name is Lewis.
I'm Doug.
And I'm Mike.
On today's episode, we have a lot of FSD news, which is really exciting. There's an FSD recall, there's the anti-FSD Superbowl ad, we've got hardware 4 leaks, all kinds of stuff. We've also got a big update on the Tesla Semi and news from the White House. Tesla's opening up its supercharging network to other EVs, all kinds of stuff, and more coming at you on episode 35, which starts now. And we're live. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Doing well.
Doing well. Alrighty. Well, I mean, I'm super excited. Mixed feelings, but super excited nonetheless about all this FSD news that finally came out. It's been a busy couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Probably top of the news is the recall. So
No, that's an over-the-air update. It's not a recall.
Well, you know, niche to hit us. So who wants to dive in on that one? Do you want to take that one, Mike?
Sure. So as we all know and love, the government has had a few things to say about FSD, or in particular Tesla self-driving, not necessarily FSD. And they came back with a little shopping list and they said, yeah, Teslas blow yellow lights. Yeah, they blow right-hand turns, even though it says don't turn. They go through right-hand turn only lanes and go straight. They do California stops that we know and love, where the car comes up to the intersection and kind of crawls through, but doesn't actually stop. Along with a few other little things, but the government says, can't do that. You need to fix that. You need to have a recall. And of course, Tesla says it's not a recall; it's just an over-the-air update. So I'm kind of thinking that 11 will fix all this, so that will be an impetus to kind of push 11 out a little sooner. I hope.
Well, certainly Tesla fans have a trouble with that word recall because it, and of course, in the media, it just gets all over it. And
oh yeah, they do. They play it up in a big way.
And my own family, like, does this affect you? This recall? So the news really goes with it. But yeah, it's just a software update. But it's a little bit interesting to me. So the things that NHTSA brought up, these are places where the car basically breaks the law, right?
That's correct.
and now I think the thing
I like those things.
Yeah, with the rolling through the stop signs, I thought that was already fixed. The California stop, that behavior was changed.
Mine's done it.
Well, so there's a difference. One is that it comes up to a stop, and then instead of just going, it starts creeping because the camera's not in the right position, right? But I think what they were complaining about though was it not actually. It used to just not come to a stop, and it would just sort of come up and just sort of roll through. Yeah, which is behavior that's a little bit more like normal people drive, and might be a little less annoying to the people behind you. So they needed to come to a complete stop. So I thought that part was already taken care of. One thing that I don't think they mentioned, I think you might have mentioned it, but I don't think it was actually mentioned in the actual recall, was the turning right when there's a no right turn on red sign. And I've had that happen to me several times.
It depends whose news release you read.
Oh, okay. Okay, because they definitely
I've had it happen too. So that's why I kind of perked up when I saw it.
Okay, and they definitely mentioned the going straight in a turn only lane, which is terrible.
The yellow light thing, it's interesting because since I've re-engaged the FSD subscription, that was one of the first things I noticed, that the new version I have hasn't handled yellow lights very well at all. It consistently blows yellows given half a chance. I'm not sure if the car went colorblind or it's just.
I don't see how that's any different than how I drive my car.
It is. I mean, all the people around me are doing the same thing, but
yeah, I've found I have to gun it a little bit. Like it's going through a yellow. I'm like, okay, let's make sure we actually make it.
I haven't had that problem with the Plaid. It just
well, it's just in the speed that's already going. It's
Right.
it's approaching a relatively stale yellow, and say, okay, if you're going to go for it, then we need to go for it. So I'm not really sure. I tend to think it slows down approaching yellows, but it's going through them regardless of how long they've been there. So yeah, something needs to be changed there. So will version 11 really fix all these things?
Well, the fanboys say version 11 is going to save the world.
There's a lot of speculation on what this recall means, right? Because technically, the on their official website on NISTA, the Gov site, when they posted it, they said these are the issues. It's been recalled, and the remediation is Tesla's going to release an over-the-air update. Well, what does that mean, right? Is Tesla going to release an update that disables FSD Beta? Are they going to release version 11, which quote unquote fixes all of these issues? Are they going to just release a point release? Or are we just going to get another, 10 whatever that magically fixes whatever these issues are? I'm still, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. It's a little bit crazy to me because
I think we'll get 11. I think 11 is going to be the fix.
You think it's going to be 11? Yeah, I mean,
think so.
It would be nice because Elon promised us 11 a few weeks ago, and it's you make a prediction and you're like, by the end of this year, such and such will happen. Yeah, that's so far away. Who knows? When you literally say by the end of next week, and you miss that by multiple weeks, that's usually a bad sign.
Well, he's repeatedly said a week, and if you do recall, he said earlier, he said by the end of the year, back when we had the whatever AI day, personally, by the end of the year, version 11. So who knows what the holdup is? Supposedly, some employees have it now, right?
Version 11 is open to employees already. Yes, they have. They've been testing 11 for a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. So I'm really hopeful. I want it to be that they're releasing 11 sooner because it'd be nice to get that. As far as will that be the fix? I don't know. I'm going to be really disappointed if they come out and go, oh, by the way, we're turning off at FSD Beta for the next few months or something or whatever it is.
There would be such an outcry about that. Yeah. I don't think they could. I don't think they could deal with the press on that.
It's also weird. Like, what's the timeline of when they have to fix it by? Because the notices, like the letters that they send out, aren't even going out until like April 15th or something like that.
I haven't seen any remediation date.
So it's like, well, by that point, Tesla could just drag their feet and say, yeah, we're fixing it. We're doing an update. And then eventually we get 11 whenever that happens. Or
11.1 or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, how would they fix some of these things? The yellow light thing, okay, it would have to have some kind of timer or thinking about how long that yellow light is there. But, the length of yellow lights changes, everywhere, right?
Depends on the light.
It depends on the light. And then, but you don't want to be stopping at every yellow light because that would be terrible, right? The turning in the no turn lane, that seems like map data to me. Like you would have map info knowing that this is the right turn only lane. Part of it was, the speed, right? And typically it misses the speed limit because there was a truck and it got occluded and didn't get to read it, or it misread it, or it misreads an interstate number by, Interstate 80. It thinks the speed limit's 80, I'm not sure how you fix that.
Well, I've got a consistent issue on mine. I can repeat it on a daily basis. And that is, there's the sign on the side that says the speed limit, but right next to it is a sign that says, well, if you have a trailer, it's less. Yeah. And the car gets really confused with those two signs and almost always goes for the lower speed.
Right. So I've had the issue with the truck's only speed, and you're, slowing down to 45 when you should be doing, 65. Yeah. And the other thing, if that right turn only or no right turn, how do they do that too? Because I don't think the camera has the resolution, at least in hardware 3, or if there are new cameras. I don't think the camera has the resolution to even read that sign.
It depends, right? Like sometimes it's marked better than others. So I feel like it's never going to be perfect.
I'm going to throw a scenario. I'm going to throw a scenario at you guys, and you can tell me how Tesla's going to solve it. This is real. This is a college not too far from here. Big sign on the intersection. No right turn on red. Little tiny print underneath that says between the hours of such and such. And the car never understands the hours of such and such. So, it causes a lot of confusion right there. And people get really irritated because humans go up and they see the big sign and they stop and then they don't go because they don't see the little tiny sign underneath that puts a time limit on it.
Yeah. So I don't know what you do unless you have, and this is something Tesla always says they don't want to do is, this very specific kind of map data, knowing that's what it is. I would think like stuff like it being a right turn only lane, that should be map data because that's low resolution and that's, you should know that because it's a very clear lane
data
marking.
Entry saying that if you're at this coordinate, then these rules apply.
Yeah, I mean, because they typically know how many lanes there are, and I think that's part of the map data. The speed limit thing is also part of a map kind of database, so they should be able to do that.
I mean, the notion of the speed limit missing the sign, humans have that same problem. If trucks or things in the way, they don't see the sign, they don't know. But we're normally driving with the flow of traffic. So it's kind of like, it's silly when you're going with traffic and then the car goes, oh, I can't go this fast. I'm going to slow down now.
But I don't think the car understands what flow of traffic really is.
Yeah, I mean, it knows the flow of traffic. It sees the vehicles
it knows what's
around
it, but it doesn't see ahead. It can't look ahead and say, well, traffic is flowing at X speed, and it's going to stay that way for the next quarter mile I can see. It sees 2 or 3 cars ahead, and that's as far as it goes.
Sure.
I mean, that's as far as I see for the most part, right? I mean, am I really seeing? I mean, I can look down at the highway going up, I can see it, but I'm mostly reacting to what's around me, right? I don't know. I hope they can fix these things. You would think, and one of our comments said, well, if they had a solution to this, they would have already implemented it.
Right.
Maybe.
There is some argument that it could be a prioritization issue, right? So like, I agree. If Tesla had it to where FSD just worked perfectly all the time, like, yes, we would have it today. Obviously, they don't have that. They're working on various aspects of it. This is possibly the government going, hey, this thing, you better focus on this because we're deeming this more important. So maybe it'll, adjust the prioritization of how they work on their models.
So my first thought when I read this recall notice is, what version of software was the government even looking at? If they've been at this for a year, I mean, there's been 3 or 4 releases since then.
Right.
Yeah, and like I was saying, that the comment that they had on the stop that sounded like a previous version. So who knows?
Yeah, I feel like that's already been adjusted. I haven't noticed it doing it since, but. It is funny though, like you mentioned, Doug, the media is like picking up on this. It's becoming widespread, and we'll get into part of why that is shortly, but with the Superbowl ad. But like, I thought it was funny because I also had family members reach out, and I saw somebody in our chat made a comment that, their family messaged them. Like, I literally got a phone call going, hey, you have a Tesla. Do you have that software that they recalled? Did you know that they recalled your car? You're driving
a death car.
Yeah, like you're totally screwed. Your car's got an issue. And it's just like, first of all, why are you calling me? If you know about it, I obviously know about it, right? Like, but that aside, but it's just like, it was shocking to me because normally, I've had cars in the past with recalls. My parents never contacted me. They don't know. Right. So it's very interesting to see like how mainstream, how broadly, how wide the news reports on stuff like this because it's Tesla. It's a very different experience.
Yeah, especially when it's like hundreds of thousands of cars included in that recall, and then you have
100,000 plus.
And you have 300 something, and then you have the skeptical family members who are like, "Oh, you have a Tesla, huh? Oh, you have that problem? Let's rub that in your face."
Yeah, I got news for you. My Pacifica, self-driving doesn't work any better. So
yeah. Oh man. So now the question is, all right, so we don't know what the fix is going to be. It'll be interesting. So Mike, you said you think it's going to be V11. Doug, where are you on this? Do you think V11? You think they're going to turn it off? You think it's going to be something else?
I think it will be. Oh, geez. I'm sorry. I don't have a good answer for you. Somebody, made a comment in our thread about this on the forum. And he said, well, since it's a recall, Tesla has to fix this for the, at their own cost, right? So if it requires hardware 4 or some new hardware fix it.
Yeah. Good luck.
We get it.
Good luck with that.
I don't believe that, actually. I mean, I believe that since it's a recall, Tesla does have to fix it, but within that, the set of fixes, as you mentioned earlier, is turning it off, right?
Right.
So I don't think Tesla will. That would be catastrophic if that happens, right? So Tesla will fix
that would
it.
tank their stock price a bit too much.
Yeah. I think hopefully version 11 would fix it. You know what I would bet is that we'll get a fix. It might not be perfect, and then there might be another layer with another round with NHTSA.
Yeah, it'll be interesting though, especially now because the White House and the government and Tesla is getting in bed a little bit, and we'll talk about that coming up. But before we move on to other non-FSD things, we have to bring up the timing of this was interesting. This recall, right? The timing is interesting because for those of you that watch the Super Bowl, you may have seen an ad on TV, depending on where you live.
Yep.
It was aired where I was. Now I'm just going to throw out there, and I'm probably going to offend many people. I'm a giant nerd, physics, computer science. I do not watch the Super Bowl. It's just not something I care about. I watch other things. But I of course saw the ad because it went viral all over the internet. It was a huge thing. And I also had people that I knew contact me who saw it from watching the Super Bowl, friends of mine. So there was the Dawn Project, right? Released an ad at the Super Bowl. For those watching on YouTube, Doug is we're showing the clip now. And it's kind of like a montage of all of the various little bad FSD videos that have been out there before. FSD hitting the mannequin of the kid, FSD, going through a stop sign, FSD going on the wrong side of the road. Just all these various scenarios of FSD doing horribly. Now it's an incredibly biased compilation, for sure. But that doesn't mean that FSD doesn't have many of these problems. I don't want to downplay and say that it doesn't have these problems. Oh yeah, that was a fun one. They roll a kid on a skateboard or something, right? Or a mannequin. The car just takes it out. Oh yeah, going through stop signs and school buses. So anyway, so obviously FSD has these issues. It's far from perfect. And so this was aired on the Super Bowl. I think they reported they spent something like $600,000. It was not national. It was in certain key markets, but it was interesting. They did it at like state capitals. So in some of the big states like California, Texas, New York. They also did it in DC, obviously for the US Capitol. And there's obviously an agenda here, right? Like their intention is to get legislatures to attack Tesla, to go after Tesla and to try to shut down FSD. So anyway, so that the question is that happened like not even a week before this recall happened. So what do we think, guys? Do we think this video had anything to do with it? You think,
I think the timing is a little too fast. I don't think the government works that quickly that the Super Bowl ad that they saw on Sunday, and then they have a recall order like within 4 days or something.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little too quick. This stuff had to already be in the works. So I don't know that there's a direct correlation. I do love this little bit at the end here where they hit the mannequin and the kid's head pops off. I think that's especially over dramatic and exciting there. I'm not quite sure about the timing. One thing that you notice when you're looking at this video, and others have pointed this out, there's you see this little message on the screen, and I think that's the message that's like autopilot won't stop because you have your foot on the accelerator. And you see that in many of these situations. This is the one where it's failing to stop for a school bus. There's one where it's going through some do not enter signs. And again, you see this, there's some, warning here. It's too low resolution to see what that warning is.
Right.
But so, I'm a little concerned about, a
little skeptical.
There's definitely an agenda.
There's an agenda here. The person putting this out is, not an unbiased individual. At least it doesn't feel that way. I guess the worst thing about this, though, is that, Tesla full self-driving. They keep saying that word, Tesla full self-driving. And in the news reports that came up about this ad, even before the recall, and during the recall, they refer to Tesla full self-driving. They keep using that word, and they all have to explain, but it isn't actually full self-driving. It's like, the driver has to pay attention, and it's, you feel so bad. It's like, wow, what a misnomer. And it's kind of a own goal. Why even call it that? Like, oh, well, it's full self-driving capability, or it's FSD Beta, that's a bit of nuance.
The consumer doesn't look at that little qualifier.
Yeah, that's a bit of nuance that's definitely lost outside of the Tesla community. And I think it's a mistake, really. They should have just had a brand name. Like if Autopilot was the brand name, and then they had enhanced Autopilot, they could have called it Super Enhanced Autopilot, or just used Enhanced Autopilot for this, which is what they had before, right? And then,
in a way, isn't that what they've done recently, where they've said you can buy Enhanced Autopilot for $6,000 or whatever it is, versus FSD, which is like one or two more features?
Well, I feel like that's just a repackaging. Really, and I've said in previous episodes, this is just a progression thing. Autopilot was the name they had before, and I think Autopilot
years ago, right?
And it was supposed to encompass all this stuff, right? And there was a promise that, and this will be, driving cross country, no interventions by the end of the year kind of stuff, which didn't happen.
Right. Punch in the address on the nav system and go. Right.
And so then, now we have a few more features, and then we call that enhanced autopilot. Okay, but it's still not doing what it's promised. and so they sold enhanced autopilot, and then separately was the full self-driving capability. So this was another thing that you had to pay. At the time I got my car, you had to pay another $4,000 on top of everything you had to pay to get enhanced autopilot. And you were paying money and you got nothing back. That's, you got $4,000 for the promise. And so, it's just that the years have rolled on, and it's like, okay, well, we need to start delivering on the promise, but it's not quite there. And we've called it FSD when it isn't really full self-driving. Why use so many words, full self-driving? That implies something more than just self-driving.
Yeah, there's a certain level of emotional loading when you say that. The consumer is going to see the word full self-driving, and it's going to be very clear to the consumer what the expectation is.
Right, and they've used that term, or those collection of words to sell, right? That's the salesman term, full self-driving, and that's what I was paying for, right? So it's not there yet. So, they really should have just given it some sort of, whatever, Super Cruise or whatever the other guys do, just have some kind of term that isn't full self-driving, something that, it's just a brand name, and then it means whatever you define it to mean. It means whatever you define it to mean, as opposed to full self-driving, which is a collection of words that have its own meaning and should really mean only one thing, instead of using those words and then trying to redefine it as, well, full self-driving doesn't mean full self-driving. Like, why put yourself in that conundrum?
I feel like part of that, though, is even the stigma with autopilot originally, right? Like, autopilot has a certain connotation. It implies that the comes from planes that they fly themselves, right? Yeah. It's automatic. And so when they were using it for cars, people were bothered by, well, this isn't fully doing all this stuff. So I feel like they changed the wording to make it more obvious that it wasn't doing what it was supposed to be doing, or it's what's implied by the words. Right? Like they moved almost in the wrong direction of making it a product
Well, that was a big deal when autopilot first came out, was that people were like, okay, it should be completely driving itself now. And there are all these folks going, well, no, autopilot doesn't actually mean that. You know, when you put your plane in autopilot, doesn't mean you can go to sleep. You still got to pay attention when a plane is in autopilot. So they started like redefining, and people will still argue that autopilot means that you're still paying attention in the aviation world, right? So I didn't exactly agree with that. I think for the common person, the assumption was autopilot meant that you could get out of the seat, you could slide over and take a nap or something.
But in aviation, that's exactly what happens. The pilot sets up autopilot. They get up, they leave the cockpit, they go see the passengers, get lunch, whatever.
So you'll find a whole thread of people arguing the other side of that on you, back when the only term was autopilot. And then again, later it became enhanced autopilut. And then later again, it's full self-driving. So
I feel like this is just a continual, it's a progression for them to try to extract more revenue, right? It's, we have this thing here. We promised it would do this. It doesn't do that, but you paid for it already. Well, now you got to pay a little bit more to get this next one that will do the thing that you thought the first one was originally going to do. And it's like this feature creep of like repackaging. Now, I'm not sure that they're going to keep doing that. I feel like because with FSD, they've already fluctuated the price so much that maybe FSD is the last term. Maybe.
How can you do more than full self-driving?
Right, exactly.
Like super duper full self-driving? I mean, what else? What else is there?
Hands-free self-driving.
Well, another part of this has to do with their accounting in terms of how much of that $4,000 or whatever you paid, they can actually put on the books.
They can realize,
yeah.
So I mean, who knows? Anyway, it's the Dawn project again. It's run by the guy. What is it? Green Hill Software, or something like Green Mountain Software, whatever.
Yeah, it's a very biased.
They're very biased, but there is some legitimate criticisms of the fact that FSD implies more than what it is right now. And it's this balancing act of Tesla selling the vision of what it could be or what they're hoping it to be versus what it is today. It is getting better. Those of us that have it is improving. Should always be paying attention. Tesla says that do not sleep while you're using this, please, for all of our sake. But anyway, so it was interesting that somebody was willing to spend that much money. Granted, he's a billionaire, right? So like, what's $600,000? But anyway, it was interesting. It was interesting to see. And so going back to it, you don't think that the recall was connected to this? Yeah, recalls take a long time. It's possible though that they've been working on a recall for a while, and this kind of said, "Okay, push the button. Let's release it now." Yeah. Right? Like, we were going to bring this up, in the next whatever. They've been working on it for a year, and now they're like, screw it, push the button.
my conspiracy hat on says there's very little done in Washington that is not politically balanced one way or the other. So I'm sure there was some backroom discussions about, what happens if we release the ad or release the recall today or a month from now, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure all that was discussed, I would think.
So who releases the recall? I mean, this is the government. The NHTSA is the one that makes the announcement, or is it?
They made the announcement. They made the announcement.
I'm not sure who signs off on the form saying go ahead and do it.
Right. I mean, technically speaking, right? Like it all comes. Effectively, what I would say is, I'm sure that like the president can get this to be done, right? Or certain powerful senators or Congress people can probably get this to be done. But technically, I would imagine the head of NHTSA probably it's a job that the executive branch controls generally. So I would say it's Biden administration, but I don't know that for sure. So please correct me if you do have detailed info on this. That's just my
Is that under Secretary Buttigieg, or is that?
I would think so, yes. But again, I don't know that for sure, but I think so, yes. But the interesting thing though about this is that that they're, again, the recall happened. It's kind of like, is this another shot from the Biden administration? Because they were kind of iffy on the outs, between Tesla in them, but they seem to be patching things up.
Yeah,
so
now they're getting all nice and cozy.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. It's like I don't know how political this is, because now things are getting a little bit smoother, but and we'll cover some of that later in the show. We have a lot of other things to get to.
I mean, it is interesting that the Biden administration wouldn't even mention Tesla's name. You know, they had a big EV to do, and they had Mary Barra come up there and like, oh, look at all GM has done for EVs. I'm like, what have they done lately?
It, right?
Yeah, you're crushing it, Mary. Yeah, like really? Come on.
It's now, to be fair, it's mostly union related, primarily, right? So that's why Tesla, and there has been recent news about that where Tesla had to argue back about layoffs around those types of things.
Yeah, they did some union busting and got the who are the guys?
It was some of the data labelers and I don't remember, but yeah, there was like a whole thing about them laying off some folks that were supposedly interested
data
in
labelers. So is that why we're blowing through yellow lights and not reading signs now?
Was it the Pikers or whatever? Those people they'd hire to do the union busting?
Oh yeah,
with the Billy
the Pinkertons.
The Pinkertons. That's what
Pinkertons. Yes. Okay, I see where you're going.
Let's hire some Pinkertons.
Yeah. This is not the 1800s. Yeah. the Pinkertons. Anyway, so throwback. Deadwood had a nice thing on the Pinkertons.
Anyway. Here we go.
Anyway, great show. Anyway, we won't get into that. Off topic. All right. So moving on, other FSD news. Hardware 4 leaks. Hardware 4.
Oh,
it has been too long. We knew it was coming. It is finally, the leaks have come, and there is some really cool and exciting news, and also some really depressing, sad news.
Agreed.
So my man, Green the Only, I don't know him at all. I've never spoken to him, but I have a lot of respect for him as an engineer and someone who's reverse engineered things before. He is the guy that reverse engineers a lot of the Tesla computer stuff, infotainment, self-driving hardware, all that kind of stuff, ECU, MCU, all that. And he has posted some leaks on Twitter, basically showing that hardware 4 here, they've got the boards, that he's got the physical hardware. Here's what it looks like. Here's what the chips are. Here's the connectors, all that kind of stuff. So
all the good geeky stuff.
The good news. Let's start with the good news. The good news is basically they've made some improvements. The infotainment's still basically the same processor, same GPU. They did adjust. They got rid of a daughter board. They did optimize a couple things. They improved like the power redundancy, stuff like that. But it's still, from the power and performance side, it's still roughly the same on the infotainment side. On the self-driving side, they actually do have improvements to up to 12 camera connections. There's only 11 that are probably going to be used. One's marked as spare. The current one, I believe, has 8. So they've added additional camera options to it. And it looks like, based on these wiring and things, that there will be a bumper camera. So you'll have that camera on the nose, Doug, that you've been wanting for a while. That camera's going to finally be there, most likely.
It's about time.
Yeah, there's going to be cameras potentially in the headlights, right? Possibly for the corners, being able to see. So there's a lot of improvements from what the capability will be as far as cameras go. There's also Phoenix, the name of the improved radar, the new high HD radar that Elon's hinted at, that we talked about, last year because of the FCC filing. Anyway, that's finally going to be a part of it. So we've got this new radar thing coming in. We've got all these new cameras. Now the bad news. They changed the form factor, which means more than likely hardware 3 will not be able to retrofit. So Elon had already hinted, and we talked about it before, they've already hinted that they were not planning to retrofit hardware 3 to 4. Now, to me, that kind of meant for free. I had fingers crossed and was hoping that they were going to let us pay at least to upgrade. Nope. But with a different form factor, it looks like they won't even allow you to do that. So that is the horrible news of we probably won't be able to upgrade.
I don't think even if it would fit, you could get it to work, because you don't have the cabling for the extra cameras and sensors.
Sure.
So I mean, with enough money you can do anything, but I don't think you could spend the money willingly from Tesla to get everything added as an upgrade.
Right.
It's pretty disappointing because that's what I paid. When I got my car, it was 2.5, and I paid an extra whatever. I paid that they had a sale. So instead of spending $4,000, you save $2,000. So it's $2,000. So I saved a whole $2,000 on nothing. Right.
That's right.
And you spent $2,000 on nothing.
Nothing.
Don't be negative. No, but the truth is, though, I paid that mainly because, well, I want my car to be future proof. And
sure.
And when Hardware 3 came out, I was like, well, this isn't really doing anything anyway. So I was trying to wait. I was waiting it out. I was like, maybe, because I knew there was going to be a Hardware 4. I was like, maybe I'll just, skip this update and upgrade, and then maybe Hardware, 4 will come out. But, obviously some time went by. And they finally did get a feature that I wanted, which was I was using autopilot quite a bit on just my local commute. And it was, the one thing was at that time is it would just blow through stop signs and red lights. And so there was the feature of, gee, if you get Hardware 3, it will actually stop at red lights. And that was a big improvement for me.
That's funny.
Because I used a relatively fast road, but that had regular stop signs. So I went ahead and did the update for Hardware 3. But you still have the sense that, okay, well, it's not here yet. There's no FSD yet, but it's coming, and I've paid to be future proofed. And now what they're saying is, well, with Hardware 3, it'll be pretty good, but Hardware 4 will be really great. But so I guess I feel like the language is changing such that, the Hardware 3 will be good enough, but I'm pretty sure I was promised my car was going to become a robo-taxi and start making me money. That was
I think you can pretty much kiss that off.
That was part of the promise, right? That's what was sold. Now I would bet that maybe whatever document I signed didn't quite say that or something. But definitely that was Elon's marketing speak, or that was the promise, and he probably believed it. But yeah, that's I don't know that I ever really expected it to happen. The car is already really great, and even just navigate on autopilot to me is pretty awesome on long trips. Right. So I would not, as what it costs now, I would not be paying that for what it is. I would be happy just to have lane keeping and adaptive cruise control for the most part, because everything else is spotty enough that it needs constant supervision anyway.
With Hardware 3, that may be all we get in the end.
Well, he's promised that it will be 3 to 4 times better than a human. That's really variable.
With Hardware 3?
Yeah, with Hardware 3.
Yeah,
but the average human is terrible, right? So, so 4 times terrible is, I don't know, not as terrible. So, and that's such an arbitrary metric. I'm not sure how. Maybe it'll just be 4 times fewer accidents or something like that. I don't know how they're going to determine that.
I think those of us with Hardware 3 just got shafted in a roundabout way, maybe a direct way.
It was clear. It was clear way back then, and I said it way back then. I don't think they have the hardware. And normally it came in the context of the controversy was that Tesla wasn't using LiDAR and they're using cameras.
Sure.
Okay, the cameras can work, but regardless, I don't think they have. And I said then I don't think they have the hardware necessary. And part of that was the cameras and where the cameras are positioned.
Right.
And so with this Hardware 4, it looks like, we don't quite know exactly because we're speculating based on labels.
Yep. Right.
But it seems like they will have cameras in the nose.
Still no LiDAR, but lots of cameras.
No LiDAR. And I agree that ultimately LiDAR isn't necessary if you have the right cameras. So especially if they put like 2 cameras in the front, you'll get a very wide parallax view that you could back out.
Right. Well, that was kind of the discussion on Twitter. I saw there was a bunch of back and forth jibber jabber. Someone had a picture of a headlight, what looked like a camera in the bucket, in the headlight bucket, and people were saying, "Oh, it's a reflection." Others saying, "No, it's a camera." And back and forth, back and forth. There was some good arguments made for putting the camera there, but I could see some technical challenges of putting the camera in the headlight. But
I mean, Matrix LED headlights already have cameras in them. So Matrix LED headlights
think they might just leverage that.
But those cameras are used for the internal microprocessor for that whole thing. If you ever watch the video of it, like selectively dimming because it's
so. Do you think they could leverage that existing hardware, or do they add to it?
No, I think they're adding to it. So I don't think that they're using the camera that's already in there. I think that this is potentially a newer camera that that they're putting in.
I mean, Tesla doesn't manufacture those Matrix headlights. I'm sure that's just a package they're buying from somebody.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, again, I don't know. There's definitely speculation on that, but we'll see. But it seems more than likely from Green the Only's teardown, like that, yes, there will be camera in the front bumper, rear, bumper potentially. There's going to be corners. But there's, again, up to, probably 4 new cameras. And they're adjusting some placement, and they're also getting rid of one of the 3 cameras in the pillar that we've already know, or in the center, the front center. So that frees up a camera spot to put a camera somewhere else. So there's definitely adjustments to cameras. I think, where I'm a little irritated is I didn't expect FSD to fully work with hardware 3. I'm like you, Doug. I was like, no, they're gonna give us radar back. They're gonna give, they're gonna do all these types of things. Part of why I bought and was willing to pay, the 12 grand or whatever it was for FSD was, okay, well, I'll get an upgrade, because in the past they've upgraded people. And even if I have to pay another 2 grand or whatever it is, or 4 grand to upgrade at the time, like I would do it. Now, the fact that they're making it sound like I won't be able to upgrade at all kind of miffed a little bit. That does kind of irritate me. That being said, I'm not going to run out and sell my car and trade it in for another one, or buy a second one just to get hardware 4, because guess what? FSD isn't here on hardware 3. It's also not here yet on hardware 4. Who knows if you're not going to get to a hardware 5 or a hardware 6 before it actually fully works. So really, like, is there any reason to feel that bothered by it with your car? For the life of your car, as people have it now today, like, I wouldn't stress about it yet. I would wait and see.
Right.
Wait and see where things go. And I agree with you. As the features and things that I do use, I like them, and they're getting better as long as they keep improving the stuff that we have. The navigate on autopilot, those types of things do get better with version 11. We'll see. All that, hopefully comes out soon. Then yeah, it's it's not a waste to have spent money on having the feature available in our current hardware 3 cars.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the other question. One, like, how good is hardware 4? Like, for example, that cabin camera. Did they have the sense to make it an infrared camera? Is there an infrared LED to illuminate the interior so that
right,
you can see through sunglasses and things like that? And then how much of a dead end is hardware 3? Like, how long will they support what essentially very quickly is becoming legacy software,
obsolete,
or legacy hardware? And will they, actually port whatever new learnings they have on hardware 4 back to hardware 3, especially since we have, different camera positions, which, it's
right.
Obviously you can't just copy over the coefficients of the neural net.
Right. I mean, it depends. So, and that gets into a really interesting point. Mike, you asked me about this before the show. There's some debate on, like, well, how's this going to impact the software, right? We've got these models are trained, all this type of stuff. How's that impact things? I can see architectures where it is intelligent, where there are ways to, for example, having more cameras and better cameras gets you more data for mapping your representation of the world into some other kind of space. So I could see where they're mapping everything to a standardized, space reference, and then the neural nets that are doing all the decision making and all that other kind of stuff are happening off of that normalized representation. So it is possible that you can have almost everything be the same, and the only thing that's different is, like, the layer of using the camera feeds to turn it into, their view of the world. So again, not saying they will do that, but that is a way they could fully support hardware 3 and hardware 4. And with the additional cameras, it would simply allow it to have more accuracy or more detail in that spatial representation. So it's maybe not as doom and gloom as some people are out there saying, but Who knows, right? Like, it depends. There's a lot of different ways in which this can be implemented. If it becomes a hard fork and it dies on the vine, like, there's going to be a lot of people upset at Tesla.
You think?
Yeah, there had been a suggestion, and I'm not sure where I saw it, but it's sort of along the lines. You may have heard that Tesla is currently offering people with older Model S's. I don't know if it's
free supercharging.
Yeah, the ones that have the free supercharging, if they do a trade-in, they'll get a $5,000 bump, on their trade-in, so that maybe they can get that legacy hardware off the road, or when they resell it for their CPO, they'll yoink the free supercharging. Whereas if you're selling it at private party, that's part of the value of the car, right?
Well, that's kind of the Apple model. I mean, if you look how Apple sells their phones, they'll offer you a trade-in for your old phone to entice you to the new platform.
Yeah,
and it's usually not a bad deal if you work the numbers right.
Okay, so anyway, the corresponding sort of suggestion here, some people have made, is that if I have a hardware 3 car and I trade it in for a new car that has hardware 4, I don't have to pay for FSD again. That was the suggestion. Now, if you ask me, it should be like that anyway. I shouldn't have to pay for it again, like it's some software license I have to rebuy. I mean, because I already bought it on my existing car and it never delivered the promise, right? So but there are already people that have already repaid several times. But there's been the suggestion, well, how about you give that to people upgrading cars? I don't know. How do you guys feel about that, if that was an option?
Well, I didn't buy mine. I subscribe. So
yeah, and I think that's part of the reason.
And I think that's where it's going to go. Ultimately, I think it's going to go to subscription.
Yeah,
I mean,
right. Yeah, I mean, the problem is, so I don't disagree. I think subscription is probably the model they're going towards. The problem is they use the one-off, like, just buy it outright process to generate a crap ton of revenue.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
to fund the development. So it's kind of like, you got to give us something on this. So it would be nice. I agree. I think doing the trade-in model would cost Tesla nothing effectively, and it would, make customers happy and get more people to upgrade cars. So in the end, they'd end up making more money. So I think that would be something that would be good to do. I don't plan on doing that with mine, but if they did offer that, it'd certainly make me consider it.
Well, it'll certainly be, it'll be better than nothing, right? I wouldn't be getting a new car because of that. It'd just be like, oh, okay, the newer cars are better, and they are better. And I'm ready, it's been however many years, I'm ready to get another one. And if you allow me to do that, then I'd be more likely to do it.
Right.
So, but it just something about it rubs some people the wrong way.
Right.
So it's like, oh, we were promised this and we're not getting it now. Now you're tossing us a bone. Well, I mean, I'd rather be tossed a bone than get nothing. So
yeah, exactly. Who wouldn't? Something or nothing. Something. But anyway, so I think that kind of covers the full gamut of what's going on in FSD world. There was a lot there. Yep. So anyway, if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to hit them in the chat there, and we'll try to respond as we can. So moving on, next big topic is Tesla semi news. So I'm gonna hand this over to Doug. Why don't you hit us with the news? What's going on?
Okay, well, I'll say a few things. I mean, this has been around for a little bit, but a few weeks ago, there was an event at the Gigafactory, Nevada. And that event was really about that they're expanding that location to make the semi there, as well as making more cells, making the 4680 cells there, which is kind of interesting, right? Because back in 2016 when they opened it, and back in 2014 when they said this is what we're making, right? They showed images of this huge plant. And then at the opening, like supposedly about half of it was built, but it was functional. and Elon talked about the machine that makes the machine, right? And they kind of got burned on that, right? Ended up being a lot more trouble than it was, and it didn't. And they had the Model 3 was in production hell, right? So that Nevada factory pretty much stayed like it was in 2016. They didn't really finish the full kind of octagonal or stretched out octagon shape that they had shown. And let me bring this up. So at this event, Elon, okay, there we go. At this event, Elon sort of showed, okay, here's what the new factory is going to look like, and sort of showed off, what parts of it will be doing what, and a lot of that is is making the Semi. So at the Semi delivery event, this was years later, there wasn't a whole lot of info about the Semi then. We didn't really learn much about it. We didn't really learn what the battery capacity was or those sort of things. So in the last couple weeks, there have been a few things that changed. There's a video came out with CNBC going over the Semi, and then there was also an article by Motor Trend, which included a lot of photos and gave us some key info. In particular, like how big is that battery pack? People were wondering, and apparently it's a megawatt hour. So it's 1,000 kilowatt hours. I mean, that's huge.
Big battery pack.
Yeah, it's a big battery. A lot of other things too. Like there are the just little sort of nerdy things that people wonder about. Like for example, the charge connector. Like we heard, okay, there are going to be these mega chargers, and then at one point Elon called them semi-chargers, which is kind of a bad name because it sounds like a half charger.
It almost charges it.
it almost charges it. And I have the sense they went back to mega charger because it delivers 75 kilowatts, which is close to a megawatt. Like look at that connector for
massive.
Watching the video.
And you thought CCS was bad.
Well, it's not much bigger, but looking at this person's hand, it's not much bigger than CCS. But what it's done is you have the same sort of ground and then communication pins. It's just that the actual
those
power,
instead of
being pins, they're two massive, huge surface area connectors, which makes sense for all that current. So it looks pretty smart to me. Motor Trend has a bunch of photos of the interior and stuff like that. So it's just I just think it's worthwhile for people to take a look if they're interested. Some other cool things we learned about it is that it has autopilot or FSD hardware. And if we look at the pictures, you'll see all these interesting cameras. But apparently that software is currently disabled. But it's neat to see what they're doing with those pictures and with the cameras and stuff, and that gives you some sense of hardware for, like, there is a camera in the nose, and there are the big side wing mirrors have at least 3 cameras in it. One looking down, one looking to the rear and sort of to the side, so sort of mimicking the existing sort of camera setup we have.
I like the fact it has stalks. They didn't get rid of the stalks in the Semi.
Yeah, like what were they gonna do? Like, how could they get rid of those for like a normal person? Now, I do notice, like, it looks like the sort of capacitive buttons there around the steering wheel, but it does have the stalks for turn signals, and it has some other interesting things. So I encourage folks to.
And it has a center horn press.
Yeah.
Concept.
So priorities here, right?
Here's the side view mirroring. You sort of see all these cameras. So looking back, and you would think, okay, we need all this visibility in a truck, and also right on the nose. Which is
Should I be offended that Doug implied that someone driving the truck is a normal person, but someone that drives like a Model S Plaid is not. No, I'm
yeah. It's that plaid thing, plaid-itis.
Yeah, I should speak more carefully. It's not that not that they're not a normal person, but you would think, okay, here's a trucker, right? This is someone typically that's been doing the job for a bit and they have certain expectations, and they want to be able to get into a vehicle, and it's a work vehicle. It's not a a recreational vehicle, though it can be fun to drive. And if it's a safety issue, right? If they're trying to figure out how do I indicate I'm turning lanes, and you can't, or you got to press some button, but you've turned the wheel, you got to find where that was.
I find it ironic it has an Oklahoma plate on it, given the lack of charging stations in Oklahoma.
Well, and obviously this is in California, so it's whatever Pepsi Cola has. They probably have a bunch of license plates that they can. It's a whatever apportioned means. I guess it's something equivalent to like a manufacturer's plate. I guess it's So yeah. Really anyway, cool. I think it's worth working about. I mean, it's important. I think the Semi is one of the most important vehicles that Tesla has. During that event that Elon had at the Gigafactory, Elon said that semi trucks take up about 1% of vehicles, but 20% of emissions, which is a big deal.
Not true.
I tried to. it sounds reasonable. Well, the reality is worse. I try to check up some, to try to check that fact. And the EDF, which I think stands for the Environmental Defense Fund, and that they may have their own biases. What they said on their website, and I'll quote, says, while the delivery trucks and tractor trailers that distribute goods and cargo make up only about 4% of vehicles on U.S. roads, they are responsible for nearly half of the nitrogen oxide emissions and nearly 60% of the fine particulates from all vehicles, and about 7% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm not sure what Elon meant by emissions, because there are lots of types of emissions. And the EDF quote is talking about not just semis or tractor trailers, whatever you want to call them. They're also talking about delivery vehicles. And so 4% is larger than 1%. But half the nitrogen oxide, 60% of the particulates, that to me that means diesel probably, right? And most of those vehicles are diesel, and diesel's pretty dirty. Even when you can clean up the fine particulates with somewhat with exhaust scrubbing, but getting those off the roads and making those electric is a really important step. And some I'm glad that Tesla and others are doing that. But that Tesla is doing that with the Semi, and hopefully they'll come out with a like a box van type thing too, to get that last mile also. One interesting thing to mention is that the Tesla doesn't have any specific software for Pepsi. Like you would think, okay, it's making deliveries, you might have some specific software. And Rivian, who makes a very nice Amazon delivery truck, has some specified app in there, and you would think, Tesla should do that. And back in the day, and back when the Model S first came out, and you basically had, what we called then a big iPad, people were asked, well, is there going to be a Tesla app store? And can I, write an app and have an app on the car? And Tesla demurred on that, and it hasn't happened yet. So I don't know if it's ever happening. I certainly have higher security concerns on a vehicle as opposed to your phone.
They got Steam Deck working. They've now added Zoom. So I mean, there is just saying, like, there is some aspect to, they are adding some things, but you're right. It's not like an app store where I can just go sign up and then make my own thing that gets installed. It would be nice if they would do that, but you're right. The security,
well, particularly for a large customer, right. Pepsi is planning. I don't know. I think they maybe have about 10 or 15 now. They're planning to have the current orders for 100 of these semis, and you would think, because these guys are having to drive around with like a little tablet with their, like a separate tablet on a mount, for their delivery software. You should be able to have, if you can have some sort of common platform that you can write or port your. You have these big screens. You should be able to port your delivery software to the car, to the truck. So
agreed. Well, that's awesome. So glad to hear Tesla Semi stuff coming out. Always good to see more things. It certainly should help the stock price over time for those interested in that. All right, so moving on to another big topic, announcement from the White House. This is what we kept hinting about of why Tesla and the Biden administration has started getting a little bit friendlier lately. The White House announced that Tesla is opening up the Superchargers to other EVs.
Some Superchargers.
All right, Mike, hit us with the deets. What's going on?
So we covered earlier that Tesla was basically dissed by the White House when they first started talking about this new infrastructure enhancement for charging. Wasn't even discussed. Name wasn't mentioned. It was interesting. Now it's changed a little bit. There's been an official bonding that took place between Biden's White House and Tesla. Biden and Elon actually met up and had some words. And what came out of that is Tesla has agreed to open up some of their superchargers to all CCS type vehicles. The story is they're going to add 7,500 stations to the public network that will be open for other cars to use. And to put that in perspective, Tesla currently has 17,700 stations, and I'm talking individual chargers available across the U.S. So it won't be all of them. It'll be a subset. And there's been a lot of discussion if they're going to open all of them, or are they just going to take 2 or 3 stations at a group and open those up for CCS and everybody else is Tesla only. That's kind of up in the air. There hasn't really been any hard facts from anybody at this point in time of how Tesla is actually going to toe the line so they can get their share of the money.
Right. And this was said it would be by the end of 2024.
2024
is they have time.
They'll be delivering. And in fact, it was soon after, or maybe it's just before, right in that same announcement time frame, someone noticed that one of the Tesla supercharging stations in Hawthorne, California, popped up and said, "Oh, CCS available." Now, it's not. They don't have the magic dock there yet, but someone kind of jumped the gun on Tesla side and released, the picture that showed CCS is available. So
we haven't talked about the magic dock yet on the show.
We have
to tell us what that is.
It's this pedestal that they're using in Europe where there is a CCS adapter in it, and you would use the application. You would use your phone and your Tesla app. You would plug in and you go and you log into your app and you say, "Hey, I'm at station such and such, and here's the idea of what I want. Turn on charging." Now, I'm not in Europe. I haven't actually used it, but it seems to behave a lot like EA or EVgo has done, where you can plug in and you basically enable everything from the app.
I thought one of the keys of the Magic Dock is that it has an adapter sort of built into the pedestal.
It's built in. It's
so
built
that
in.
If you're saying CCS, it gives you, it releases the CCS connector.
Right.
And then maybe
and
if
then
you're
it
not
has
CCS,
a Tesla.
it just gives you
The pictures I've seen showed CCS one side, Tesla on the other side.
Okay, so 2 separate cables.
Yeah.
Not the single
whether
cable
they
with an
stick with
adapter.
that, whether they stick with that, nobody really seems to know yet.
Yeah, it's like your diesel pump and your regular.
But you think that for a lot of these cars, I mean, there isn't real standardization about where the port is, and
right.
Well, that's been talked about because most people are saying we're going to need longer cables to accommodate even some of the cars.
Otherwise, you only get these bozos parking, sideways across.
Don't be that guy. No, there's still a lot of questions up in the air about how this is actually going to work and work well. I know.
I thought it was interesting. If you go onto their website and you look at the supercharger map, there's this filter for superchargers open to non-Tesla.
Yeah.
So if you're actually on their official website,
but there's
right,
nothing there yet. So
there's nothing. It populates nothing. But so they're prepping for it. They're getting ready to do this.
But like Doug just said, I was looking at the Superchargers the other night, trying to figure out how you're going to charge a Rivian versus a Lyric versus an ID4 versus a Hyundai, whatever. I mean, the ports are everywhere in these cars. I mean, they're, like you said, there's no standard place. And the current chargers at Tesla are very short cables. I mean, they barely fit our cars, much less somebody else's car. It'll be interesting. EA tried to do it by putting the pedestals in the middle, turning them sideways. But that tends to confuse the hell out of everybody because the screen only faces one way. And people don't understand that most of those pedestals only allow one cable to work at a time. The very newest will go both, but they're few and far between. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
And needless to say, most Tesla owners are not overjoyed about this news.
Well, I would hope that, most installations of Tesla sites, there are at least 4, some as many as, dozens, right, of actual plugs at the site. I would hope that it would be, say, if there's a station that has 6 plugs or a location that has 6, individual stations with plugs, that 1 or 2 would be, probably 2. You don't want to just have 1 because that would be sad. That would be CCS compatible, so that Tesla people aren't lining up too long, and also that CCS would be charged more. So
I was talking to some friends about this, and we were kind of going over different scenarios. And something that we were talking about is we could see Tesla opening up the older 70 kilowatt stations, because the fear of most of my friends that drive Tesla is they're going to go to a 350 kilowatt, 250 kilowatt station, and there's going to be a Chevy Bolt sitting there, charging the 100% at 40 kilowatts, and which is a real waste. That's not going to help anybody. So the thought was, well, let's open up the older stations are already rate limited and leave the expensive new stations for the Tesla owners. But again, that's supposition and speculation at this point.
It makes sense. What's the fastest that they're doing at CCS right now?
I've done 145 kilowatts on my adapter, but I've got a Model 3 which is rate limited. The S's can do faster than that.
But I mean, in terms of other manufacturers, what's the fastest that they're charging now?
Well, you got 400, 800 volt systems. So, I mean, the fastest I've seen is 250 kilowatts.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, technically
they can go faster.
Yeah, they technically have 350, but I don't know anybody's
doing Lyric, for example, supposedly can take the 350, but since no one's actually seen a Lyric in the wild.
Yeah, so I mean, for clout reasons, I don't know that Tesla wants to be the slow one.
I'm pretty sure something I read said they would be opening it to 250. So like the CCS would be expected to be 250. So I'm not sure if they're going to do much in the 70s.
That would really suck to have a Chevy Bolt sitting there at 40 kilowatts.
Well, they could do a lot with pricing. They could charge for time rather than electricity. They could have a premium for occupying, for the opportunity cost of the 250.
Tesla will hit you with idle fees. They rate limit you to 80% if it's busy, and they hit you with idle fees. EA doesn't do that. EA will let someone sit there and charge to 100%, even if it takes them 6 hours to do it. So there's going to be some re-education that has to take place for our CCS friends.
Right. Well, whatever it is, it's going to be just more confusing. I mean, it's all the different. I mean, when you looked at the announcement, in fact, I'll bring it up. The
announcement was pretty ambiguous,
but just from the president's tweet, he talks about. Okay, I guess it's not actually in this one, but he mentioned several different manufacturers, and Electrify America and all these other guys, and they all have their own app. They have different pricing and different rules?
Well, so that's an interesting thing. The original iteration of this plan said they couldn't do the app. You couldn't marry people to your own application.
And so they just wanted tap your credit card.
There had to be a way that you could pay and go without having to deal with an app, installing it, preloading it, all that crap that they do now.
So did they make that change for Tesla? Because that would be, Tesla doesn't have that kind of hardware.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything that says that yet.
So I was wondering that, like, would Tesla put like the little screen and some hardware? I mean, they could do it, obviously, but it runs counter to their model of simplicity. Then again, if they are catering to these other guys, So
I do have the official thing up. With the actual quote says, Tesla for the first time will open a portion of its U.S. Supercharger and destination charger network to non-Tesla EVs, making at least 7,500 chargers available for all EVs by the end of 2024. Yep. The open chargers will be distributed across the United States. They will include at least 3,500 new and existing 250 kilowatt superchargers along highway corridors to expand freedom of travel for all EVs, and level 2 destination chargers charging at locations like hotels and restaurants in urban and rural areas.
That's easy to do.
All EV drivers will be able to access these stations using the Tesla app or website.
There you go.
Additionally, Tesla will more than double its full nationwide network of superchargers manufactured in Buffalo, New York. So that is the official statement on their website.
So I have an issue with that. And my issue is some of these chargers are in parking lots that have little to no cellular coverage, which makes the app unusable. I mean, I can't even talk to my car with it.
Or website. They're both.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of my pet peeves about, some of these charging stations is I have to have an RFI tag in order to make the damn thing work.
But to be fair, they could do that with an app, right? You can make it so your app uses NFC on your phone or something, right?
You can.
Well, but then they'd have to add that hardware.
You have to have that reader for it to work.
You would think, though, if Tesla's going through the trouble of they have to have a new pedestal that has this whatever,
put a reader in it,
the mega dock. They should go ahead and put some little hardware in there to
or maybe they should put Wi-Fi on the supercharging stations.
Well,
like they promised us.
They promised that at the beginning that all the supercharger stations would be solar powered, and
I'd be happy with Wi-Fi right now
and have Wi-Fi
fuel power.
Wi-Fi is the big thing. When you're looking at the like the supercharger map, and you can sort of tap and see what amenities are at each location. Often you'll see Wi-Fi, but that's not at the station. That's at the Sheets or the
McDonald's
or whatever. Yeah, exactly. They should really go ahead and have that Wi-Fi. I would think it would almost save them some. Well, maybe not, but it might save them some dough, given that I'm sitting there using my connectivity, to watch Netflix or whatever. Maybe that hardwired connection would be better. That you could,
if you're opening up your stations to a bunch of people that, have to pay you somehow, and their cell phone doesn't work, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, they should put some Wi-Fi there, and they could limit like what they can do. They do that on airplanes. I can't watch Netflix on the on the airline Wi-Fi.
Not officially.
They should do that. Again, if they're already going through the trouble of adding some hardware, they should probably just do whatever is necessary so that this happens smoothly. I wanted to bring up this tweet because we were talking about it looks like things thawing between Biden administration and Elon. I think all that is this tweet. That's it. Right?
That's the total thaw right
Biden
there.
mentions Elon Musk and Tesla in this tweet, and then Elon replies, "Thank you. Tesla is happy to support
more than
other
they
EVs
did 6 months ago."
Yeah.
I mean, 6 months ago, Elon Musk didn't exist, nor did Tesla, as far as Biden was concerned. And they did meet. They did talk, right?
I think Elon took all that pretty personally too.
He did.
He's not. He holds grudges, and I think that's probably the source of a lot of his criticism these days. So,
animosity there.
Yeah. So maybe it's a step.
For sure.
Baby steps. Progress, not perfection.
Hey, they're getting there. And I think this will, I think there's an argument for that, Tesla actually builds their cars in the US. They build them in other countries too, but for the US market, they mostly build them in the US.
Last time I checked, Texas is part of the US.
They try not to be, but they
as
are.
much as they don't want to be, right? There's still, there's a lot of people employed. There's a lot of, benefit to the, technology and whatever and revenue. So anyway, I think things will improve there over time. So, all right. So moving on to our I guess last thing that we want to bring up is our lovely thread of the week. Whenever when we try to spot interesting threads and stuff that we want to showcase on the podcast. So the Tesla Motors Club thread of the week is called "Another Direct Model X versus Rivian Comparison: My Personal Experience," and it is by who's the user? J Rowdy. So, what do we like? So, basically, this user kind of outlines his thoughts and feelings on experience with a Model X and Model X Plaid specifically. Gotta throw that Plaid in there, or a Rivian 1T. And I have to say, I really liked one. It's very thorough. There's a detailed breakdown. These are pros, these are cons.
Yeah.
What they
I like that he used paragraph breaks.
Formatting.
Like that? Go figure.
Instead of just a wall of text, you can actually, and they're bullet points, so you can just sort of go to each point there.
So it was very well formatted. So good job. No, there's a lot of good information. I was really, honestly, it's a silly thing, but I really loved their disclaimer. That I felt it was a very well stated disclaimer about, it's his opinion, not trying to change anyone else's, simply sharing, what they found.
Right.
All that kind of stuff. I thought that was really awesome. So anyway, in the end, they basically, said they no longer consider themselves a Tesla fanboy. They were a Tesla fanboy years ago. They no longer consider themselves a Tesla fanboy. But they still sided with Tesla. So spoiler alert, decided the Model X was their preferred between the two. But again, outlined various things that they didn't like about the X. A number of things with the yoke and stuff like that. Obviously, that many people have criticized, but also, what things they liked about the R1 and which things they didn't. And I find myself in a similar position, honestly, and maybe that's partly why I like the thread so much. But I also, they said I'm genuinely rooting for Rivian. I hope they succeed. I am too, right? Like I genuinely want more successful EV manufacturers out there. Anybody that's not a traditional. I hate to say that. It's not that I'm against traditional automakers. It's that I don't see them actually changing enough to be the types of companies to truly innovate and do the things that I want them to do when it comes to software and cool new features. So the newer companies, the Lucid, Rivian, Tesla being the older of the batch, those are the ones I really root for. Anyway, so I agree. I'm rooting for Rivian. I want them to do well. I don't have any plans to buy one. So I agreed a lot with this user, what they wrote. So anyway.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. We are a Tesla website, Tesla Motors Club. But the mission that Elon and that the other co-founders of Tesla espoused at the start was that we were here to speed up the advent and the proliferation of electric vehicles, and part of that means other companies doing well, and so even despite Elon predicting that Rivian will go bankrupt and unless they make some big changes soon, I want them to succeed. I want Lucid to succeed. Honestly, I'd like I'd like the existing folks to move along a bit faster too, but it's definitely going to be harder for them. They have more inertia, and they have more. Their resources are in their existing products, and they're just a little too committed to ICE, and in a way they're, you know, sort of that innovator's dilemma where once you have something, they don't want it to change, like Toyota. The innovation of the hybrid synergy drive, and they're basically, you know, trying to put the brakes on everything. And I always wonder, like, will that happen to Tesla? At what point do they reach an innovator's dilemma, you know? So that's
eventually it will. I mean, historically, right? Eventually it will.
Yeah.
You know, someone, you know,
I mean,
given time,
it's happened to Apple. I mean,
yeah,
Apple has not really innovated in the last 5-6 years. Not really.
It's happened to basically every company ever. Eventually you get to a point where you stop doing it.
Plateau out.
It's happened to Google. It's happened to Apple. You know, they're all doing it. Netflix is no longer, you know, like all these companies, but it goes back even further. IBM and, you know,
GE, to that end, you know, yes, we're Tesla fans, but we shouldn't be locked in. We should think about, okay, what is the ultimate goal here? Drive a nice car, that's one goal, and a fun car, but also the environmental impact part. And it's important that these other companies do well. I find it an interesting comparison because it's not really apples to apples, right? To you know, the Rivian 1T, I think is a pickup truck versus the Model X. I'll be interested. You know, Tesla's been lagging, but once the Cybertruck comes out, you know, okay, how does it compare to more traditional pickup trucks? And even in the comments, the people mentioned that a better comparison would have been the Rivian 1S, which I think is more of an SUV type shape.
It's like a Suburban.
Yeah, it looks like that. And they're definitely bigger vehicles. I have a relative that recently got a Model X Plaid, and he complained a little bit. It's like, oh, it's not as big as I thought it would be. And this is his first EV, and he's probably used to pickup trucks and stuff. And he found it a bit small. Of course, I find it huge. I find the Model 3 huge. So. So it's just kind of funny.
I feel like the Model S is very big. It's so wide. It's just like, yeah. Anyway.
So wait till we see the Cybertruck. You know, that looks like it's going to be big. So so be interesting to have those comparisons when they come out.
And even though we can appreciate these other things out there, we all still kind of agree that Tesla's still the best one you got. So there's nobody that does better than them currently. So we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, as much as we might gripe about silly things and capacitive buttons and whatnot.
Yeah.
Still
not even close. All right. Well, that's a wrap, gentlemen. Any last words before we close it out?
I've actually got a PSA for everybody.
Oh, PSA.
Public service announcement. No. This is reasonable. This is reasonable. So you all know I bought a Model 3 used from Tesla when they're their CPOs, you know, the certified prior owned cars. Looked almost brand new when I got it, inside and out, drove almost brand new, really nice. I pulled out the cabin filter yesterday to change it. Hadn't been changed since June of 2019.
Oh, that's terrible. Did it smell funky? I mean, I have to change mine every year because it starts to smell funky.
It didn't have any smell I could tell, but I don't know if they like soaked it in freshener or something, Febreze or something before I got the car.
Febreze.
so my
I doubt they took it out at all.
Yeah, my PSA is if you buy a used car, any car, Tesla, whatever, change the cabin filter. Do yourself a favor. They're not that expensive. They're not hard to put in.
I would have thought that would have been part of the certified pre-owned part.
Apparently not.
You would think.
Like there are so few maintenance things to do. You think they would have done that one, right? They just vacuum it and what? You know, come on.
They scrubbed it clean and didn't bother opening up the filter.
Alrighty. Well, that is a really good PSA. So. Oh man.
Your sinuses will thank you.
Yeah, I bet. Well, all right. With that, that's episode 35. As always, we appreciate all the feedback. So we had a number of folks comment on the thread on Tesla Motors Club on the forum. So as always, keep them coming, YouTube or on TMC. Comments, messages, all that are good. We love it. Like and subscribe, please. Hit the bell. Do all those YouTubey things. It's it helps. Become a supporting member on the website. All that stuff helps out. Allows us to keep doing this. Thanks to Danny and Adam for helping out behind the scenes and making this happen. With that said, we'll see all of you next time.
Later.
Cheers.